So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. We have a distinguished guest with us, and it's really worth paying attention to his words. And also, it's worth supporting the ideas that he's going to present. So I will start a short 15-minute interview with the Chief of General Staff of the Czech Armed Forces, Karel Řehka. I think that there is no need to introduce him, so I'll start asking questions right away, because our task is to make a connection between the industrial panel, focusing on the future of the Czech defense industry, how to set the system so that the Czech defense industry is able to utilize all the opportunities and also contribute to defense capabilities of the Czech army. That's why we have the unique opportunity to transpose these topics to the interview with Karel Řehka. When talking about modern technologies, I have to ask a question. What are the takeaways for the Czech army from the war in Ukraine and also perhaps from the Middle East? So what is the biggest lesson, technology lesson for the Czech army? So hello. First of all, I would like to thank Jagelo for organizing this conference, and I want to thank all the supporters of this conference. I think the importance of this discussion is getting up and up. So when we do the discussion, we always talk about it at several levels. On the strategic level, of course, there are also some lessons, such as the importance of the approach of the whole society to defense issues, that attrition is not a bad word, but it's always part of a big war. And the importance of strategic communication, the importance of the economy, etc. So these are the lessons at the national level that perhaps are not the topic. When we look at the war theater, what is important is that the battlefield is transparent. There are many sensors in the visual spectrum, electromagnetic spectrum, and the thing that you can easily surprise the enemy is not the case. The dynamics is changing on the battlefield because it's important to, for example, to hide or mask the concentration of your forces, because there are so many sensors. And so that's one big lesson, and that influences technology, protection against certain technologies, but also the changes in the mindset and the doctrine. The second large area is that the decision-making process is getting very fast. The targeting cycle and how long does it take at the level of a brigade to identify a target through processing the information, setting priorities, and let's say allocating who is going to respond, and until the moment when something happens, well, the speed is huge, and it relates to the sensors, to data transfer, to better images of the battlefield, but also using AI and other new technologies. The third, so that was the second area, and the third area, and it's also important, is, well, you have certain elements of a combat force always. It is dependent on how effectively you are able to combine the firing force, control and command, and other aspects. And now what is important, there is one new element, and that is adaptation, fast adaptation to changing conditions, including technologies. That gives you a huge advantage over your opponent before you start firing, before the conflict or the conflict starts. So it's not value added, really. It's an integral part of the combat force of the army so that it's able to adapt very quickly, including technologies. Thank you very much. So these are important points. So let's try to connect these individual outcomes from the Ukrainian battlefields and what are the outcomes for the Czech defense industry. First of all, the approach at the level of the whole society. What does it mean for the Czech defense industry? Well, when we talk about the whole society approach, is nothing new, but Ukraine shows it quite well. If you have a huge conflict that is intensive, that might last for a long period of time, potentially conflict with Russia, you cannot get ready for such a conflict, and you cannot resolve it without involving the whole society. It was mentioned by the National Security Advisor when he talked about the visibility and diplomacy. We keep talking about internal security, external security, but we miss out the role of diplomacy. You know, if institutions do not work, if you have no communication, when you decide whether to activate collective defense, you cannot function if the government cannot meet, if the parliament is not able to meet. If the institutions in the state do not function as they should, then the army cannot do anything. So that's general. What it means for the defense industry. Once again, it relates to the lesson that attrition is a part of it all. There is a cliche that the army are able to win battles, but economies hold wars. So the economy and defense industry must become part of the whole defense system. I'm not saying that we should nationalize it, no. But it should be part of the system because it will then ensure better integration with the state, better communication, and also it will bring certain requirements as far as the industry is concerned and the expectation. The war of attrition is the term that the Americans describe it in the concept. We have to prepare for the idea that there won't be any short wars, that there will be long-lasting wars, and it will be important to have good connections between the defense industry and the army in order to ensure supply of critical materials. So we need to have resilient companies. That's how we perceive the outcomes from the Ukrainian battlefield. You have mentioned one important thing regarding modern technologies, and that is the UAVs used in Ukraine, but also the use of AI. AI could also help in the aspect that we need to, or could it help with the decision-making process, with speeding up? Well, in Ukraine, you can see drones, UAVs, and also ground systems. This is something that is discussed, FPV drones, electromagnetic spectrum use. But what is not perhaps that visible, and not many people perceive it, but what is really excellent is the cyber space and the systems that are able to integrate huge amount of data and deliver the correct type of information in the right form to the right place that is then able to respond. Some of the systems that we had the opportunity to analyze, and I've discussed it recently. Well, there is really excellent, huge innovation. Yes, UAVs, this is a phenomenon at the battlefield, but also the asymmetric threat. When talking about hybrid threats, it's something that we need to take into account. Also, in your public speeches, you have highlighted several times that the Czech army is not meeting all its committed capabilities, let's say, by 6 to 10 years. So what would be the most important step that the state needs to do in order to reduce this gap? What kind of key technologies should we focus on? When talking of capabilities and targets, it's not a question of the army. Army can only do what the political representation and the society allows the army to do. We are in a situation when I believe it's in our life interest to really make sure that the US is still interested in Europe, and the interest will be reduced because the situation is changing. We have to strengthen the European pillar of defense. What it means for us when we say, and we really say it, that collective deterrence and defense is the main pillar of the NATO, means that we need to focus on the targets and capabilities. So we have the capability of targets, and there are really, we have not performed as we should have, because we neglected it in the past years. And what we need to do is to keep the attention of the US, and in order to strengthen the European pillar, we need to increase defense spending. And it is not a military decision, it is a political decision. It's a decision of the government. And I have heard about many priorities, but it seems like everything is a priority, and when everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. That's my general experience. So we cannot say that we are going to be a reliable ally, that we will improve the air defense, that we will improve the territorial defense, that we will support defense industry and all of this, and not increase defense spending. This is not possible.
Ještě chci říct takhle, to je jedna věc.
And another thing, but of course, we have to innovate. We have to innovate, we have to adapt. Because capability management is always about finding the balance between what your imminent needs are, which is fight tonight. So what you'll do if a war breaks out tonight or in a month. But also not to forget to develop your capabilities for future wars. So you have to find or strike the right balance, because research and development is needed also for the fight tonight scenario. So you also need to look for non-traditional solutions. Innovate And look at the Ukrainians. They started using UAVs at the time when they had big gaps in the area of artillery. So we have to invest, but we have to adapt, and we have to change our approach to things. We cannot be building one building for 6 years when we know there's a threat. We cannot acquire technologically advanced products the same way as we approach the acquisition of a big tank, because technologies develop much quicker. We have to distinguish and be flexible in order to change the specifications and do it hand in hand with the industry. You have to acquire technologies as a service. It's not that we cannot be planning for something, then close it, finish it, and when it comes to implementation, it's already an outdated technology. So we need to have better and more flexible processes. We need to change our mindset, our approach. We have to change our acquisition process, and if the legislation needs to change, then be it. And we need to also change the daily business, because at this pace we are already behind the schedule. Even if we give extra funding to the defense area, which we do not want to do now. And now I am not against any political decision. I'm just saying that if we say, okay, this is the decision, then we have to assess the risks. The person who made this decision has to sign it off, and we have to adapt to it. That's it. I think it's crucial. And I think it's essential for our political representation to be aware of the priorities, what the priorities are, so that the entire system can adapt to the priorities and make the necessary funds available, because you can't achieve anything without funding. And this is crucial for acquisition processes, because we need to make sure that the army can use the technologies that are being, the latest technologies that are just being developed, and also try to buy something just for a test run, or look at battlefield tested technologies or battlefield proven technologies. So the army should be able also to have a feedback and give feedback. And I'm glad that the defense industry, or I'm grateful for any activity where the Czech defense industry can test its products in cooperation with the army. Therefore, I'm so grateful for the drone shield exercise, because it's a great testing platform, and I hope that this testing platform will continue to exist, because it also contributes to education, the links between army and the education sector and training. And it also helps with the technical equipment of the army. And look at the Ukraine. The engineers who contribute to the development, they are also on the front line with the soldiers. So they communicate on a daily basis. It's not about us, going to a store, choosing a product, or doing a feasibility study, which takes a year. Then we take some time with it. Then we do specifications, which is kind of like writing a PhD thesis to make it right. Then you have a tender that goes on for 2 years. You can't go like that forever. Because, of course, there are areas where such processes are suitable, but you cannot do so for software solutions. You cannot do so for high-tech, which changes quickly. But, of course, there are good practices or good examples of practices as well, such as in e-fight, in passive systems. Drone Shield is a good example, which got going with the help of our people. And it includes the defense sector. We want to also include NATO teams. So, yes, there are a few good examples. But generally speaking, looking at the environment and the changing environment and the changing conditions for the army, I have to say that the conditions that would make that I have to say that over the past 4 years that I've been in this position, the conditions haven't changed to the better at all. We are looking for pathways, but to be honest, the sense of urgency is missing, and very little has changed over the past 4 years. I'm not saying that nothing has changed, of course. There have been some changes to the better, but when it comes to the mindset, the delegation of powers, kind of like having the army, or giving the army more powers or more wiggle space, more possibilities, and this hasn't changed. By way of conclusion, I would say that some of the steps initiated by the defense industry, which is connected to what you've mentioned, is the possibility to test the capabilities and to test the technologies in real scenarios. So Czech companies develop their technologies, export their technologies, and test them in Ukraine. We know that. This is definitely a useful test. But when it comes to our region, testing offensive systems is almost impossible. And it would help a lot to cooperate with defense tech companies and use of former military areas that are normally not accessible to the public. So this could serve as a test bed. Yes, there are some legislative restrictions, we know that, and of course everyone is trying to change that. It's also a question of capacities, because those training or military areas, some of them were decommissioned, and this complicated things for us, because then sometimes we have to have exercises in civil areas. But there are many companies who develop specific techs for the Ukrainians. They send their experts there. They develop new technologies based on shut down Russian technologies. And thanks to the support that was given to Ukraine, with the aim to help them, we have opened doors there. And I haven't been in a situation when we wouldn't be able to have a transfer of know-how from Ukraine. But the obstacles are on our side. So it's not that the Ukrainians wouldn't want to share it with us, but the obstacles were here. Yes, we did have workshops, we did send experts there, but the biggest obstacle to transfer know-how for Ukraine here were our internal house rules. Perhaps I would add that I perceive a great gap between the government, the state, across the political spectrum or across the party lines, and the level of patriotism that says I am proud as a Czech citizen, as a Czech representative, as a Czech politician, as a Czech member of the government, of what is being developed here in the Czech Republic, what technologies we have, what technologies we test in the battlefield. Last week, an interesting presentation of Czech technologies in the area of UAV protection or UAV defense and tech fight possibilities was made to our ministers. And we need to continue these presentations and activities in order to increase awareness among our politicians, because based on these presentations, received support from the politicians. So I would like to thank you for your short introduction, because you made several very important points, and we need to spread awareness of the urgency. So thank you.